Oh, yeah. It's the Security Weekly News, episode 161 this week. Welcome to the week of 24, October 2021. REvil strikes back. Windows XP, SMS fraud, Nobelium again, BQE, Discourse, and Polygon. All this and Jason Wood on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Before a ransomware attack occurs, train your teams to recognize an attack and use anti-phishing technology. Protect your applications, and they can't get onto your network. Simple backup and restore solutions quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now by visiting securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
All right. I'm Doug White, and I could not resist this story. I mean, as an installer of Windows 3.0, Windows 3.1, DOS 5.0, even DOS 3.0, I installed all those. But this was the 25th, so it was, yesterday, was the 20th anniversary of Windows XP. That's right, good old Windows XP. So it's so old that its name is in Roman numerals. And I actually said that once to some people, and about half of them didn't know what Roman numerals were, and the other half were trying to figure out what a P meant in Roman numerals. I think I told somebody it meant like 138, just to keep them off balance. I was wondering if they look at movies and they thought like MX was like an extra in some movie, like mix, yeah. All right, mix. Yeah, anyway. Good old XP rode off into the virtual sunset in 2014. When some of you were just young pups and larvae or whatever. And that was the end of life date. I mean, that wasn't just like end of support. That was sorry, no, we're done. Please don't use it anymore. But unlike Ray Batty, they did not have a termination date. So it just kept on going. 2015, 2016, 2017, one of those calendar tearing off animations they have, all the way to today. I mean, XP was born in a modest home in Rahway, New Jersey on the 25th of October in 2001. And grew up to be such a big boy. Microsoft has released a couple of fixes for it from beyond the grave, but mostly no support since 2009. So StatCounter reported in September, listen to this, that decimal point, 59% of Windows users were still running XP. And okay, so that sounds like, 0.59% of people have alien DNA. I mean, it's such a tiny number. But, if you take and if 0.59% of you sent me $10, well, let's just say I wouldn't be retiring on it. But if 0.59% of all the Windows users worldwide sent me 10 euros, just a suggestion, sayonara, folks. The article itself's a bit light on the data, so they don't say what the 0.59% is based on in total. But ZDNet, so I went looking because I got interested. ZDNet said that there are maybe as many as 1.5 billion users, according to Microsoft, who always kind of err on the high side. They just sort of do that. But let's just use some higher math, and we'll call it an even billion, a billion with a B. So 0.59% of a billion is 59 million state workstations. It's still got more users than Vista. Probably more than Windows 8. But, it's probably time for an update, folks. I like that old dog, too, but sometimes you just got to take old Yeller out to the shed. It's sad, but that's the way it goes. A lot of SMS fraud has been going on lately. I get about one smishing text every single day. It either tells me AT&T is giving me a huge break on a new iPhone or that I've won a new iPhone. Just click here to get that. I also got one today about cheaper gas price or something like that. But this particular story reports that Ultima SMS, which sounds like a video game or a skateboard, something. But apparently it involves about 151 apps that are in the Android store that have already been downloaded about 10 million times. And it's actually being used to extort money in a very me kind of way. Not that I extort money, but if I was going to extort money, this is probably how I would do it. And what they do is it's a fake, or it's not a fake, actually, it's a premium SMS subscription service. So Jakob Vavra from Avast found the campaign and gave it this name, Ultima SMS. It could also be one of those Transformer robots, right? It's like a Volkswagen Beetle and a Jeep, and they turn it, yeah, that kind of stuff. The fake apps in the Ultima collection have all sorts of different purposes, legit purposes, like custom keyboards, QR code scanners, media editors, spam blockers, filters, game, pretty much everything you got. I'm sure there's some probably porn sites in there too. But Google has supposedly gotten rid of the ones that they identified. But Vavra says they probably just infect other stuff and put them back up. So he said, they just keep rolling with this, which makes a lot of sense because you've already got the code for a photo editor. Change the name from, Super Photo to Supra Photo and put it back up. The profiles that are associated with these apps seem legitimate, but they also tend to include, according to him, generic policy statements and very, very basic developer profiles that have generic email addresses. And they also apparently have a lot of negative reviews, which is why, and all those reviews said, this product is a fraud. Now, we're all used to those, right? Because I was looking at home routers the other day, and I was reading some reviews, and of course, there's always negative reviews that say this product is awful and it won't work, and you kind of get used to just filtering some of that. Anyway, Vavra said this was a global campaign with victims in more than 80 countries, and the campaign uses catchy video ads on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok that we're all familiar with. The app then checks your location, your IMEI, I guess it reports that in, and your phone number, and then it uses the appropriate language for your location, like, good afternoon, Mr. Bond. And the app then prompts you to enter your phone number and your email address, which all, sounds okay, I guess. The app then automatically subscribes your phone to a premium SMS service, which sends text to this short-coded number and has a small, not that big, they didn't get greedy, and a small charge. It's small charge. Tiny charge for every text that it sends automatically. So the app ends up charging people about $40 a month. And which does, again, this is like the day of it, doesn't sound like much. It doesn't sound like much, but, I'm guessing, and that's my kind of scam, is that it's subtle. Because if I suddenly hit you with 500,000 text messages, you're going to go, why is my text messaging bill like $5 million, dude? I don't know, man. Quit watching porn. And I mean, but if you got a charge on your phone that's like $3.85 or even $39.40, you're probably not even going to notice that. I mean, if I can just hit you with that every month and I do it to 10 million people, 10 million times 40, okay, we're getting somewhere. You may not even bother to see that, and you may keep paying it for years, kind of like my gym membership. I mean, these things are hard to spot, and you may want to include some messaging for all your folks about this type of scam because these are the most insidious things of all. You don't even know what's happening, and you suddenly realize, why are we paying $29.93 a month for this, service? And you're like, I don't know, what is it? I don't know, just leave it alone. Don't turn it off. The lights may go out. Nobelium, which is linked to the Russian spy agency SVT, is the APT behind the wonderful SolarWinds supply chain attacks from earlier this year that we all know and love. Well, now, according to Mandy at Microsoft, they're back. This time, they've changed strategy. They're now infiltrating reseller networks using credential stuffing and phishing. I mean, why develop, sophisticated 0 days and Trojans when you can just call Bert down in HR and go, hi, I'm going to need to install Log Me In on your desktop. Okay. They're also using API abuse and token theft, the usual kind of stuff, to get into these resellers. But the goal appears to be to gather credentials and privileged access, so like connectivity and all that kind of stuff, so that they can get to other places. Once they get those credentials from, say, Sid's Frankfurter supply that, delivers wieners to the base, they can actually use that to get into the base. And so they get into the networks, and they use that on the customers of the resellers. So basically your Coke machine is a Russian spy. I mean, so go out there and take care of that right now. And of course, you've still got Bert and HR and so forth. Microsoft said they'd observed more than 140 resellers and tech service providers being attacked since May. So, I mean, you need to protect yourself from these resellers and their code and all the other providers that are now starting to get into your networks with trusted connections and so forth. I mean, it's really common practice these days when they put up a soda machine. Guess what? It's got some kind of, they want to connect to the Wi-Fi and so forth. The article did have some additional tips, but warns that some of these attacks may be the next SolarWinds style supply chain attack that will be very, very difficult to spot, and that they are infiltrating at all levels. Episode 5, REvil strikes back. After the U.S. and others formed an international coalition to go after the REvil ransomware group earlier in the year, the U.S. then went and made a bunch of high-profile arrests. They shut down servers. They seized stuff. They froze accounts. They did all this kind of stuff. The war on ransomware, just kind of like the war on drugs. It'll probably still be going on when we're all dead and gone. And, somebody will be like, the war on ransomware has now been won. Yeah, right. Mission accomplished. But anyway, a cybercrime group called Groove is calling for revenge. And it's a kind of revenge of the nerds, if you will. But basically, the group encouraged the extortion community. Now they're a community. It's like the Elks Club. The extortion community is encouraged to band together to target U.S. interests at home and abroad. So Bleeping Computer had a translation of one of the posts, and so this is a quote: "While our boys were dying on honeypots, the nets from rude AIBI squeezed their own, but he was rewarded with hire, and now he will go to jail for treason. So let's help our state fight against such ghouls as cybersecurity firms that are sold to ammers like U.S. government agencies." So obviously English maybe not their first language, or, I don't know, they could be. I've read some student papers before that were like that too. But they also call for laying off Chinese companies and call them all good neighbors. Wow, sounds like 1972 all over again. I can't wait for the Senate to take this up so I can watch a bunch of 80-year-olds argue about digital socialism, commie pukes. I guess this is like a digital Cold War. I'm going to call it Frozen Five-Finger Death Punch War. Get it? I know, if you have to explain the joke with footnotes, it's no longer a joke, and it might be an academic paper. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, not Anton, Antony. Antony Blinken announced yesterday that the State Department will establish a new bureau and an envoy, which is like a person, I guess, or maybe it's like a group of people, but an envoy that will handle cyber policy as well as revamping current policy. I guess, CISA, anybody? CISA? Bueller? No. Anyway, Blinken said that a review showed the need for structural changes in how the U.S. deals with cyber attacks. So they are creating the Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy, which is going to be called, they didn't say this, but I guess CDP, which will they were going to house a new special envoy, so I guess a group of people that will look at critical and emerging technology. This would be subject, of course, to the approval of Congress, which that ought to be interesting, because this will, of course, be subject to the Reds voting against anything proposed by the Blues and the Blues voting against anything proposed by the Reds approach, which we're currently using, which will probably be a stalemate for the next 20 years. Anyway, the article states that a spokesperson from the State Department said that the envoy will focus on 3 key areas: international cyberspace security, international digital policy, and digital freedom. I always get nervous when the government starts appointing envoys to look into freedom, for the children. Sicherheitsdienst. Yeah, exactly. BQE Web Suite is a billing and time clock app, which is pretty popular and had a nasty 0-day that Huntress Labs found in early October. It was basically called an SQL injection bug that has been patched, but, well, we all know how that ends. Apparently, the SQL injection has led to the exfiltration of traditional data, but also allowed the injection of ransomware into the system and subsequently ransomware the entire network of a U.S. engineering company. BQE has more than 400,000 customers worldwide. I didn't think the actual SQL injection was barely worth the name, but I guess it really is. All it took was a single quote in the login field, and the bug could be triggered. And then that allowed concatenated SQL queries, so you can string all that SQL code together as concatenated queries to the MS SQL database back in. Obviously, that leads to the old select all and star type exfiltration. But since they can dump all the tables, they may well be able to get ways to get into and allow remote code execution. So, ouch. There are apparently, according to Hunter, 8 other 0 days in BQE that were found that have not been patched. So if you are using this app, you may want to look at some mitigation for this. BQE did confirm the original vulnerability, and they did confirm that it was patched. They did confirm also that the new ones were being investigated, and investigated hard. They said this does not affect Bill Quick Web Suite, so they wanted to make that clear. I don't know what that one is, but only the BQE Web Suite. So if you're using those products, you presumably know what that means. Discourse patched a security flaw, which could allow remote code executions in version 2.7.8 and earlier. The bug allowed triggering through a malicious Amazon SNS subscription payload in the AWS notification webhook handler. So this is all about, connections between places. There's all the technical details are in this article, but basically it was a lack of validation allowed malicious requests. So as ever, patch your Discord, and they do have a mitigation if you can't patch for some reason, and they said that version 2.7.9 and up corrects the problem. Joe R.N. Chen is the handle, published the technical details in a blog post, which is linked in the article, so if you want to read the grim details of that, you can. Polygon is a blockchain tech company, and they paid out a $2 million bug bounty. Yeah. Gerhard Wagner found the bug, which allowed the attack to essentially double the amount of cryptocurrency you were trying to withdraw 233 times. I mean, the example they used was $4,500 could result in a $1 million withdrawal, which makes me kind of doubt the way that they did the math or the way they described it. Since if you double 4,500 233 times, it's a lot more than $1 million if you want to do that higher math. Polygon is a protocol and framework for building and connecting Ethereum-compatible blockchain networks. Hadn't heard blockchain in a while. But basically, the blog post explains how the bug works. But essentially, when you withdraw money, there's this process, or when you deposit money, there's a process where it creates a token, and you have to prove the token, and you have to burn the token. And that proves a deposit was made. The flaw is in this thing called the Plasma software, which acts as a bridge between this and Ethereum and other things, but it allowed you to repeat this process, which means that you put in a single deposit, burn the token, but you could burn the token 233 times, which would allow. I don't think that's actually doubling it. I think that's just repeating it. So it's not like 4,500 becomes 9,000 becomes 18,000. It must be like 4,500, 4,500, 4,500, 4,500. But it allows you to withdraw a lot more than you put in. Let's put it that way. It's a pretty interesting attack, and the blog is definitely worth a look if you like such things. Coming up now, an absolute classic. I can't even read. An absolute classic. He practically defined the 1970s, sporting a handlebar porn stash, Porsche sunglasses, and an enviable collection of gold chains. He invented such classic disco moves as the pelvic gyrolator, the infamous Michael Jackson crotch grab, the hustle thrust, and the double reach around, all working under the sobriquet Bend Over. He joins us today in saner times and is none other than Jason Wood.
Tell you what, and I was a crazy first grader, obviously. Oh, so with that lovely introduction, honestly, I ended up focusing on the world of e-crime again because it's like an ongoing train wreck. You can't stop watching it. There's always something new, and you just never know what to see. Doug already actually covered the one that I thought was the most funny, which was Groove, screaming and losing their minds over, REvil being taken down or being hit or being inconvenienced in some way. My reaction was, somebody called them a wambulance. I don't care. I just guess their feelings are hurt and they just got to complain about it to somebody. Maybe they need a new therapist. So I was looking around though, and I saw this article that did catch my attention on the Conti ransomware group, which I like to affectionately call Wizard Spider most of the time. The story was published by Brian Krebs, and covers how Conti has decided to start selling access now to victims' organizations. So this is more like the access broker type of model. They're still doing ransomware and negotiations for payouts and threatening to leak data and stuff like that. But now they're going to go ahead and start selling access to people's environments and letting them in that way. And it appears to be that to qualify for your organization's to go up for sale, access to your environment to go up for sale, you have to somehow piss them off, basically not pay the ransom or do something else that they find to be offensive in some way. So, then they'll put you up for sale instead. Krebs included a screenshot of their leak website and where they're selling access and whatnot. And I kind of like this quote. It's not quite as good as the one Doug read earlier, but it still is pretty humorous. If you go to the site and you're looking to see, what you have up there available for you about your company, they have, and this is a quote, "If you are a client who declined the deal and did not find your data on Cartel's website or did not find valuable files, this did not mean we forgot about you. It only means that that data was sold and only therefore it did not publish in free access," end quote. Again, some questions about their translation process. That was actually one whole sentence with a bunch of commas. There are a couple things I thought was kind of interesting about this. One, calling their victims clients. I'm sure that the victims feel like this is a good and beneficial client relationship that they have with the ransomware groups. One of the organizations they showed, he had a few organizations, descriptions of them. They blurred out portions of it to identify that would identify the victim. But one of them, they have descriptions of the businesses to tell you what it is you're getting into if you buy access to this. And one made me cringe a little bit, as it was family-owned commercial printer. So I'm picturing like this outfit, for example, here in town that I know of, and you're just like, oh, great, yeah. I doubt they even have an IT staff, much less anybody that helps them out with InfoSec at all. So somebody just got clubbed big time there. Either way, there's a bunch of speculation. Why are they doing this? Why is this change happening? Particularly with all of the noise around, the pushback from the U.S. and Europe against the ransomware operations. The CTO of a company named MCSoft said that he was wondering if they were preparing to close up shop, and they just wanted to milk the last little bit of money that they could get out of some kind of intrusion that they had already committed. And so instead of hanging around to get to try and do ransom payments or do the negotiation, just have somebody quickly buy access to it and they can cash out before something causes them to shut down. Are they feeling the heat and thinking, well, crud, we're next to have our infrastructure taken offline? What's going on here? Now, there's also some speculation. Maybe this is just another tactic to take a victim that didn't want to pay out and get them to the negotiating table to decide on some kind of ransom to pay and get the money that way, basically having fears of a threat actor being active in their environment. But then there's the observation, of course, that, of course, we're notifying them that we're selling their access, so wouldn't they fix their stuff? Of course, wouldn't they fix their stuff? Some of the stuff that these groups are using to get in shouldn't have already been fixed anyway, or be working on that once systems got ransomed up? I don't know. Security firm named Digital Shadows, their comment on it was that this was more of a observation that they're having trouble managing their data leak sites. Their comment is that they try and leak out this data to put pressure on the victims, but to download a bunch of data over Tor can take a really long time, and it may get interrupted, and it decreases the amount of threat that this is really going to get spread around. Where if we put it up on a website that anybody can just right-click Save As, that puts more pressure. The downloads are more reliable. Except by doing that, then the site is much more prone to being taken down. They say through legal pressure, but also maybe some somebody getting in and getting access to their infrastructure and just tearing it down entirely, leaving the official court out of it, if you will. Maybe some kind of operation where it's authorized by whatever intelligence court gives them the green light, if they're, depending on what that takes. Honestly, I just kind of look at the whole thing and kind of laugh a little bit. It looks like, in some ways, a lot of this kerfluffle about, the ransomware operators changing their tactics like this and complaining and whining about how things aren't going the way that they want, and the U.S. and Europe are being so rude and breaking the law, or what law that was. I think it was Groove was complaining about that, about, what law is this available under. Anyway, it looks like kind of a positive, because this is just them crying out in pain. Things aren't working out for them, so they're trying to fuss and just vent about it, and threaten to cause more damage and suffering to their victims, in the hopes of maybe getting people to back down. At least that's possibly the way it is. Who knows? Like Doug says, I don't think this is going to change anything. There's too much money here, and they're just going to adapt and continually find new ways of doing things. But they're certainly getting hurt. I mean, Colonial Pipeline pays out $4.4 million to pay the ransom, get their systems back, and then somebody steals $2.3 million of it right back from them, because law enforcement had access to a passphrase for the wallet and just sucked it right back out. So that's a bummer, right? That'll ruin somebody's year. They also don't like it when their infrastructure gets taken down on them. And even if it's one of your competitors, Conti is complaining about stuff that's happened to REvil as well. It can be a little threatening to sit there and wonder if we're next. And honestly, I hope they are. So it's fun to see him get defensive about it. We'll see what developments occur in the near future, as I'm sure there will be. Maybe we'll find out more about why Conti is making this change to sell access to environments. What's their goal here? Is this maybe they're getting ready to shut down, or is this just a change to their business and they plan on continuing on mostly in their current form with a few minor adjustments? I'm sure next week something will be totally new, and we'll probably be talking about it here. So more to come, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Thanks, Jason. And finally, I love a good algorithm. I love neural nets. I think they're cool. I did a lot of work on that kind of stuff way back when. Facebook also likes these algorithms. And as ever, money talks, and Facebook is certainly no exception to that. Their so-called algorithm basically sounds like a neural net, as they've started revealing chunks and little tidbits of this stuff in these documents. They basically found in their marketing type studies that emotion was a lot more important in engagement than a good old thumbs up. So you like to talk about people you hate more than you like to talk about people that you think are okay, right? I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's just a lot of marketing is just sort of like, well, yeah, it's common sense. But they also figured out that if smiling only takes 2 muscles and frowning takes 137, or whatever that was that your gran used to say, then anger should be worth a weight of 5 over when an anger emoticon or emotion or emoji or whatever you call. I know emoticon makes you sound like you're 75 years old. Emoji, actually not. If I was 75, I'd be going, a what? But an emoji and a 1 for a like. So if you get upset about it, you get a much heavier weight. And of course, if you know anything about neural nets, you know that those weights are constantly adjusting the hidden layer, which means that it's gonna keep adjusting. So if you know anything about humans and neural nets, well, more anger, pretty soon, well, let's take it outside of the alley for a dance off with the sharks and the jets. I mean, if you start your neural net with weights like that, and the users of the neural net are actually reinforcing it by furiously clicking the anger icon until their enter key breaks into tiny razor-sharp shards that you just can't quite get out of your fingers, and add one bombastic New Yorker politician, and voila, you're moving product like cocaine at Studio 54 in keeping with our 70s theme. Post a picture of a kitten, 10 likes. A picture of Hillary eating a baby, boom, 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 boom. I mean, 100 million angry bubbles. I mean, which one's the ad guy going to pick? Seriously. I mean, Don Draper's got to sell those Luckies, and Zuck needs a new mega space death platform if he's going to keep up with the Musks and the Bezoses, and the Bransons. I mean, anyway, we'll see in the continuing battle of 80-year-old flip phone users versus Facebook what happens. And that's the news. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for joining us on Security Weekly News. Shots now, not that kind of shots, or maybe some of each would be good.